seems that we all recall the most famous reindeer of all. And Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer not only turned out to be one of the most famous Christmas stories, but also one of the greatest Christmas specials. And Rankin and Bass really knocked it out of the park with this one. Yeah, I mean, it's just a great Christmas story, which is funny because at its core, the moral of the story is people treat you like shit until they need something from you. When you watch this, you'll notice that mostly everyone treats Rudolph like complete shit. Yeah, the other reindeer treat him like shit. Santa Claus is a total dickhead to him. And even Rudolph's own father is a complete asshole. But everything turns out okay, and it's a pleasant little Christmas special. And it's also a bit bizarre at times. Let's take the Island of Misfit Toys, for example. Okay, so it's an island comprised of toys that nobody wanted. And why didn't anybody want them? I mean, they're not that bad. I wouldn't mind a cowboy that rode an ostrich, a squirt gun that squirts grape jelly. Just put water in it. And Charlie in the box? Couldn't you just change his name? Okay, so maybe I'm being a bit too picky here, but still, it's just a bit odd. I mean, I don't understand why nobody would want these toys. But then you remember how much of a dickhead Santa Claus is in this, and you sort of start to put it together that maybe he's the one that thinks they're not good enough to give out to children. Oh my God. Absolute bastard. Oh, and by the way, the Island of Misfit Toys is ruled by King Moonracer, a flying lion. Yep, a flying lion. Yeah, they just sort of put that in there and nobody ever seems to question it. It's a winged lion in a Christmas special. What's the backstory there? They never tell you, so we never figure out why the Island of Misfit Toys is ruled by a flying lion. Yeah, it's a pretty unexpected fantasy aspect of this, and yeah, I know the whole concept is fantastic to begin with, but I think it's worth mentioning. And a few of the other Rankin and Bass Christmas specials, like Santa Claus is Coming to Town and A Year Without Santa Claus, contain some borderline sword and sorcery aspects. And you can certainly tell that Rankin and Bass really enjoyed what they were doing. And not to mention the very bizarre Rudolph's Shiny New Year, the sequel to Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. And being a sequel, this is supposed to take place after the events of the first Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Yet, in this, Rudolph is actually younger than he was at the end of the first Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. So, I mean, are we just supposed to ignore that? Or, I mean, what should we do here? I mean, I don't get it. Yeah, it's a pretty big continuity error, and we just sort of overlook it because it's a Christmas special. Well, actually, as the name implies, this is a New Year's special. A New Year's special? Nobody cares about New Year's, which is why Rudolph's Shiny New Year was nowhere near as successful as Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Yeah, I mean, nobody really gave a shit. And I think the timing of its release had a lot to do with that. You see, this premiered on ABC December 10th, 1976. And I mean, well, December 10th, people are still gearing up for Christmas. They're excited about Christmas, not New Year's. They don't want to hear about New Year's yet. And get this, in Japan, this premiered 3 years later in 1979 on December 24th. Yeah, Christmas Eve. A New Year's special on Christmas Eve. I mean, that's just a terrible idea. I mean, Christmas Eve is when the Christmas excitement is at its absolute zenith, and nobody wants to hear about New Year's. I think it was just bad timing. Now, if this premiered on New Year's Eve, then, well, it might be more of a hit. But premiering this before Christmas is sort of like having a Halloween special on Easter, or having some bullshit Earth Day celebration on the 4th of July.
Every day is Earth Day.
But regardless of all that, Rudolph's Shiny New Year is still a very bizarre television special, and it shows us that making a television special about New Year's is very hard. I mean, what do you got to work with? Basically nothing. So what are you supposed to do? So Rudolph's Shiny New Year isn't all that bad considering. And you really have to hand it to Rankin and Bass for actually making a New Year's special. They would pretty much be the only ones to do so. Yeah, it took a lot of stones to pull something like that off, and Rankin and Bass are arguably the kings of the holiday TV specials. Though they are best known for their Christmas specials, and boy, did they make a lot of them. But also, they did a stop-motion Easter special with The Easter Bunny is Coming to Town from 1977. And this has Fred Astaire reprising his role from Santa Claus is Coming to Town. And nobody talks about this. Nobody seems to remember this. And they did a Halloween special with Mad Monster Party from 1967, and this features the voice talent of Boris Karloff. And this just isn't any other holiday television special. This is an hour and a half long, so it's pretty epic, yet once again, nobody remembers this. They also did a Thanksgiving special with The Mouse on the Mayflower. And though these are forgotten about now, but Rankin and Bass certainly tried their hand at other holiday television specials. And even though Rudolph's Shiny New Year is a bit of a bizarre sequel to Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, it's still a clever way to make a New Year's television special. And this was released on VHS by Vestron Video and again by Warner Brothers Home Video in 1992. And the Warner Brothers Home Video version would have multiple reprints all throughout the 1990s. And even though the Vestron Video distribution seems to be a little hard to track down nowadays, it does seem to go for an average of around 5 buckaroonies. The same goes for any of the Warner Brothers Home Video distributions. But then you'll have the occasional wise guy trying to sell this for around 25 bucks. 25 bucks, really? Well, it looks like someone has been into the eggnog. Eggnog. And speaking of sequels to Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, Robert Louis May actually did write a sequel called Rudolph Shines Again, and it was published in 1954. So let's go back to the gazillion Rankin and Bass Christmas specials, and let's mention some that are totally forgotten about. And sure, these were very popular when they first came out, but for one reason or another, they just simply fell by the wayside. Like Nestor, the long-eared Christmas donkey, which first premiered December 3rd, 1977. And this is, as the name implies, about a donkey with absurdly long ears. And like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, this was a stop-motion animated special. And also like Rudolph, Nestor was based on a song by Gene Autry. And much like Rudolph, Nestor has an odd X-Men-like malformality. You know, I had somebody once try to explain to me how Rudolph was one of the X-Men, but I just kind of stopped listening to him. And this one is forgotten about mainly because I think everyone did themselves a favor and blocked this from their memories, because this is really sad. Yeah, this is like G-rated tragedy porn. Sure. Everything turns out all right, but man, what a long, sad road it takes to get there. Jeez. And you know, well, most of us don't really like being brought down around Christmas. We'd rather see something a little bit more happy, which is why I think this Christmas special isn't as well remembered. Hey, people just don't like to be sad, okay? I do. Okay, except him. But, I mean, really, around Christmas, you don't want to be sad, so why would you watch this? And Nestor, the long-eared Christmas donkey, is not to be confused with Dominic, the Italian Christmas donkey, which is one of my favorite Christmas songs. And Nestor, the long-eared Christmas donkey, is narrated by a character called Steel Toe, who is one of Santa Claus's donkeys. And not only does he narrate the story, but he also explains to us how things work around Santa Claus's stables. And this is pretty neat because this is where they tie in Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, so that's pretty cool. And I certainly go AP for cinematic universes. Now, as I mentioned, Steel Toe is one of Santa Claus's donkeys, which makes him a Christmas donkey. Another Christmas donkey. So between Dominic, the Italian Christmas donkey, Nestor, the long-eared Christmas donkey, and now Steel Toe, it seems like someone was trying to make Christmas donkeys a thing, but it just never took off. I'm not sure why it didn't. I mean, I like the idea, and who doesn't like donkeys? What a great ass. But that's enough about asses and sadness, which is the working title of my autobiography. Next we have The Stingiest Man in Town from 1978. And every time I read that title, I think it says The Stinkiest Man in Town, which is the title for my second autobiography. So anyways, The Stingiest Man in Town is a Christmas special done in the classic animation style. And it's a rendition of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. And geez, that's the last thing we needed was one more of those. Yeah, I'm pretty sure the reason why nobody really remembers this Christmas special is that there's so many other Christmas Carol renditions that this one just got lost in the fray. Now, that's not to say this is a bad rendition of A Christmas Carol, which is one of my favorite stories, but it's just, I don't know, one too many. And this is pretty decent, and it does contain some pretty cool imagery. Oh my god! Yeah, this one's pretty neat, and it's too bad they never play it on television anymore. Next we have The First Christmas from 1975. And later on, they started calling this The First Christmas, the story of the first Christmas snow. Now, I'm not entirely sure why they added all that. It sounds a bit wordy to me, but whatever. The First Christmas is another stop-motion Rankin and Bass Christmas special. Now, Rankin and Bass became best known for their work in stop-motion, but every now and again, they would throw us a curveball and give us something that was classically animated, such as Frosty the Snowman, 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, and, like we just talked about, the stingiest man in town. But The First Christmas is another stop-motion animated special, and this one isn't very well remembered because, well, it's pretty forgettable. Yeah, there's nothing really remarkable about this one. There's nuns in it, and boy, I guess that's about it. Yeah, there just doesn't seem to be a whole lot happening with this one, and you compare this to your Rudolphs, to your Frosties, to your Little Drummer Boys, and this one just sort of falls flat. Up next we have The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus from 1985, and this is based on the book from L. Frank Baum. Yes, the mastermind behind The Wizard of Oz wrote A Christmas Story, which is kind of like if J.R. Tolkien wrote a story about the Easter Bunny. And The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus is another Rankin and Bass Christmas special that delves into some sword and sorcery aspects. And this would be the last Rankin and Bass special to be produced in the stop-motion style. And in Japan, this wasn't released until 1986 and went under the title Santa's Secret and Great Adventure. So why is this one forgotten about? It seems like it has a lot going for it. Well, I just don't know. You know how some people are. They're pretty f***ing picky. F***ing picky! And all of these would be released on VHS by Warner Brothers Home Video in 1990 as part of their Holiday Treasures collection. Holiday Treasures? Shit, nobody remembers them. Well, there's nothing wrong with a catchy name to really pop your attention, and this would be the only time that these would be released on VHS, with the exception being The First Christmas, which had already been released on VHS in 1987 by ABC Home Video. So the lamest Christmas special out of all these is the only one with 2 distributions. Well, isn't that just perfect? And since these are forgotten about Christmas specials, the VHS for these must be very rare, right? No. Yeah, I'm going to go with no on that one. Yeah, these are pretty easy to track down nowadays and go for around $5 So it would seem that the world of the Rankin and Bass television special is extensive indeed. But it seems like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and Frosty the Snowman are the only ones that people give a shit about. But I think that I've harped on Rankin and Bass long enough. And if I say Rankin and Bass one more time, I'm going to shit.
Watch the full episode here, as well as other classic Cat Nanos VHS pirate ship adventures. And please hit subscribe.